When I walked into that courtroom, my son Daniel leaned back in his chair with a smirk, whispering something into his wife's ear. They thought this was the day they would finally take everything from me. But the room shifted the moment the judge looked up. His eyes met mine, and he froze, his gavel slipping slightly in his hand as if he'd just seen a ghost. "It's him," the judge muttered under his breath, loud enough for the silence to devour his words. Every lawyer stopped mid-sentence. The clerk's hands hovered above the keys. Even Daniel's grin faltered as confusion crossed his face. They had no idea what those words meant, but I did. I had lived long enough to recognize the moment when fate decided to step back into the room. They thought I was just an old man, clinging to a crumbling house. They were wrong. Every morning in Millbrook began the same way for me. I would rise at 6 o'clock, pour water into the old kettle that had whistled faithfully for over 3 decades, and reach for my favorite mug, a white one with a fading navy stripe. It wasn't just a mug. It had been my wife's gift to me on our 10th anniversary, back when she was alive and our kitchen still echoed with her laughter. I still remember the way she teased me that I drank more coffee than water, how she'd roll her eyes and then kiss me on the cheek anyway. That mug carried her touch, even after she was gone. After brewing coffee, I would check the small rose bushes on the porch. My late wife, Margaret, loved them. She had planted the first bush with our little boy standing beside her, his chubby fingers patting the soil like he was sealing a treasure. Tending to those roses kept her memory close, as if she were still whispering through the leaves. My life wasn't glamorous. It was stitched together by small routines, small memories. And though it may have looked ordinary from the outside, to me, it was a life filled with meaning. I never traveled far. I never chased wealth. What I did chase was the dream of raising my son Daniel with every ounce of love I could muster. I worked long nights in the warehouse, came home smelling of dust and iron, and still managed to cook him breakfast before school. I fixed cars in neighbors' driveways for extra money, shoveled snow in the dead of winter, and even sold homemade wooden birdhouses at church fairs, just to make sure Daniel had what I never did: opportunities, a chance to become someone greater than his father. To most people in town, I was just an old widower with calloused hands and grey hair that grew more stubborn every year. But inside, I carried decades of sacrifice, quiet devotion, and a kind of pride that came not from what I earned, but from what I gave. One Thursday evening, I prepared dinner the way Margaret used to when Daniel was small. I spent hours working on her favorite beef stew, cutting the vegetables slow and careful, letting the pot simmer until the scent filled every corner of the house. My hands ached from chopping and stirring, but it was the good kind of ache, the kind that reminded me I was still alive, still able to create something out of love. I set the table with the embroidered tablecloth Margaret had made during her long recovery from surgery years ago. Every stitch had been her way of staying hopeful. I placed a small vase of fresh roses in the center. I wanted Daniel to see that this was still his home. I wanted him to feel the warmth of the house that had raised him, the place that carried every memory of his childhood. When they arrived, Daniel's wife, Claire, walked in first, her heels clicking on the hardwood like they owned the space. She had sharp eyes and a smile that never quite reached them. Daniel followed, tall and neatly dressed, with the kind of polished air he never had when he was younger. He walked straight to my old recliner, Margaret's favorite chair, and sank into it without asking. He grabbed the remote, turned on the television, and barely glanced my way. "Dad, we need to talk," he said, his tone clipped, almost rehearsed. I forced a smile and motioned toward the kitchen. "Dinner's almost ready. Your mother's stew, your favorite." Claire cut me off, her voice smooth but cold. "This isn't about dinner. We're here for something more important." "Oh." I noticed Daniel mute the television, but not turn it off. His attention flickered between me and the game on the screen, as if our conversation was just another distraction from his evening. "What's wrong?" I asked, trying to steady the tremor in my voice. Daniel leaned forward, clasping his hands. "Dad, the house is too much for you. You can't keep it up anymore. It's old, it's falling apart, and you don't need all this space. Claire and I, we need it." for our future. And the words hit me like a hammer to the chest. My hands shook slightly as I folded them on the table. What exactly are you saying, Daniel? Claire stepped in smoothly. We found a retirement community just outside Millbrook. It's beautiful. They'll take care of everything for you. Meals, cleaning, medical checkups. You'll have people your age around. It's the sensible choice. I swallowed hard. This is my home. Your mother died here, holding my hand. Every wall, every floorboard carries our story. Daniel's expression didn't soften. Memories are in the heart, Dad, not in bricks and wood. We've already spoken to a realtor. The paperwork is started. He reached into his bag and pulled out a thick folder. This will make things easier for everyone. Easier? I whispered. The word felt sharp, almost insulting. Claire crossed her arms. You should be grateful. We're making sure you're safe. I stared at them both, trying to recognize my son in the man sitting across from me. I'm not leaving, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. Daniel's smile vanished. Dad, be reasonable. You're old. You're alone. Just last month, you slipped in the backyard. What happens if you fall when nobody's around? I opened my mouth to remind him that I had stumbled because of the broken walkway, a hazard I had already fixed. But I knew it wouldn't matter. They had already decided my fate. The stew will get cold, I said instead, pushing back from the table. Let's eat first, then talk. Daniel and Claire exchanged a look, one I had seen before. That silent communication couples share when they think they've already won. When I brought the pot to the table, I noticed only 2 plates set out, not 3. They weren't staying. They hadn't planned to all along. The days that followed felt like storms rolling in. Daniel showed up with a real estate appraiser in a crisp suit, a man who walked through my house as if it were already sold. He tapped on walls, measured rooms, scribbled notes, and spoke with the detached tone of someone cataloguing a corpse. The pipes are outdated. The kitchen is decades behind. Roof might need replacement, he said flatly. I wanted to tell him that those kitchen tiles were laid by Margaret's own hands, each one set with care, while Daniel played with his toy trucks in the corner. But to him, they were just outdated squares of ceramic. Claire followed close behind, nodding at every comment, never once looking at me. Every word felt like a nail in the coffin they were building for my life. My home wasn't sacred to them anymore. It was a transaction, a profit margin. Mrs. Jensen, my neighbor, came to the back door holding a pie she had baked. When she saw the stranger walking around with his clipboard, her brow furrowed. Mr. Turner, is everything all right? Before I could answer, Daniel stepped forward. Family business, ma'am. Dad's moving to a retirement community, just getting the place ready to sell. The shame of it burned in my chest, having my neighbors find out this way, as if I were already gone. Nothing's decided, I managed to say. Actually, it is, Claire replied sharply. Mrs. Jensen set down the pie and placed a hand gently on mine. Call me later, she whispered before leaving. That evening, I sat alone in the kitchen, staring at the folder Daniel had left behind. The papers screamed of transfer, ownership, finality. My son, the boy I had carried on my shoulders, the boy I had cheered for at every baseball game, was preparing to erase me from my own life. For the first time in years, I felt the house closing in on me, the walls pressing down, the silence deafening. I looked at Margaret's roses on the windowsill and whispered, I don't know how to fight them alone. A week later, Daniel and Claire returned, this time with a lawyer. He was young, sharply dressed, carrying himself with the smug assurance of someone who believed the case was already won. They spread papers across my dining room table as though it no longer belonged to me. Mr. Turner, the lawyer said smoothly, these are transfer papers. Once you sign, the house will be placed in the care of your son and his wife. Everything has been arranged for your comfort. Your transition to the retirement community will be seamless. I adjusted my glasses, scanning the pages. The words blurred together. Transfer of ownership. Permanent. Irrevocable. My chest tightened. This wasn't about selling the house to someone new. This was about taking it for themselves. "I'll need time to review these," I said firmly, "and I'd like my own lawyer to look them over." Daniel chuckled, dismissive. "Dad, that's not necessary. We've already taken care of everything. Trust me." "Still," I said, my voice steady though my hands trembled, "I'd prefer another opinion." The lawyer exchanged a quick glance with Claire, discomfort flickering in his eyes. "Mr. Turner, this is a time-sensitive matter. The retirement community has a waiting list. We must move quickly." "Lee." When I refused to sign, Daniel's mask slipped, his tone hardened. "Dad, you're not in a condition to make these decisions anymore. I'm your heir. I'm acting in your best interest." My jaw tightened. "My condition?" Claire leaned forward, her voice deceptively gentle. "You've been forgetful. You're fragile. It's not safe for you to be alone. If you don't cooperate, we'll have to pursue other options, guardianship, maybe even mental incapacity proceedings." The room spun. My own son, the child I had broken my back to raise, was threatening to strip me of everything I had left. I forced the words out. "I'm not signing anything, and if you threaten me again, I'll call the police. Now leave my house." Daniel stood abruptly, his face red. "You're making a mistake, Dad. We're trying to help you." "Help," I said bitterly. "By taking my home. By declaring me incompetent." "Dad, you're being unreasonable," he snapped. "We're worried about you." End of. If you were worried, you'd visit more than twice a year. You'd call me on ordinary days, not just holidays. You'd ask what I want instead of deciding for me. For a moment, I thought I saw shame flicker in Daniel's eyes, but Claire placed a hand on his arm, and it vanished. "We'll be back," he said coldly as they gathered their papers. "Next time, we won't be asking." That night, I sat in Margaret's chair, unable to sleep. Their words echoed in my mind. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was too old, too fragile. Maybe the house really was too much. The thought cut deeper than any insult they had ever thrown at me. I stared at the photographs on the wall, Daniel, as a boy with scraped knees, Margaret smiling at his graduation, our family gathered at Christmas. Every memory told me I had given everything, and now I was being treated like a burden. "Margaret," I whispered into the silence, "I don't know how to fight this alone." The next afternoon, while rummaging through Margaret's old desk for comfort more than anything else, I noticed a slim folder tucked beneath faded bills and letters. It was bound with a small lock I had never seen before. My pulse quickened. I searched the desk drawers, the shelves, even her favorite books. Inside an old gardening manual, I found a tiny brass key. My hands trembled as I slid it into the lock. The folder opened with a soft creak. Inside was a stack of neatly arranged documents, each marked with Margaret's initials. My breath caught. Most were contracts, statements, things I didn't fully understand at first glance. But then one page drew me in. A will, signed and dated just months before she passed. I sank into the chair as I began to read. Line by line, my reality shifted. Margaret had been far more careful than I ever realized. She had never spoken much about money. I thought we lived on my warehouse wages and her small earnings from tutoring. But as I flipped through the papers, the truth unfolded. For decades, she had been quietly investing every spare dollar. She had bought small properties when prices were low, put money into company stocks, even purchased a piece of farmland on the outskirts of Millbrook. The numbers on the statements made my head spin. But the greatest shock was yet to come. The apartment building where Daniel and Claire lived, the place they thought they were paying rent for each month, was ours. Every check they had written had been funneled into an account with Margaret's name, now mine. For 2 years since her death, rent from every tenant had been quietly deposited, untouched, waiting for me. I wasn't just an old man clinging to one house. Margaret had left me an empire Daniel and Claire knew nothing about. At the bottom of the folder was an envelope addressed in Margaret's handwriting. My fingers shook as I opened it. "My dearest Henry," it began, "if you are reading this, then I am no longer by your side. Forgive me for keeping this secret. I wanted it to be a gift for your later years. You gave everything to Daniel and me. You worked yourself to the bone so we could have more than you ever did. I wanted you to live without fear, to know you would always be safe." Her words blurred through my tears, but I kept reading. "I must tell you something else. I never fully trusted Claire. There is something in her ambition that worried me. That is why I arranged the inheritance this way. If Daniel treats you with love and respect, he will share in this legacy. If not, you hold all the power to protect yourself. Use it wisely, not to hurt, but to teach. All my love forever, Margaret." I pressed the letter to my chest. Even from beyond the grave, Margaret was protecting me. I had never felt so loved and so heartbroken at the same time. Why had our son become someone who could stand by while his wife threatened his own father? Where had I gone wrong? But I also felt something else rise in me, something that had been buried under years of weariness and grief. Strength. Margaret hadn't just left me money. She had left me a weapon, a shield, a chance to reclaim my dignity. I carefully replaced the documents, locked the folder, and placed it on the desk. Then I picked up the phone. On one of the investment statements, I had seen the name of a financial advisor. "Millbrook Financial Services," a voice answered. "This is Olivia Harris speaking." I cleared my throat. "Miss Harris, my name is Henry Turner. My wife was Margaret Turner. I've just found some documents of hers. I think I need to discuss them with you." There was a pause. Then a warm but steady voice replied, "Mr. Turner, we've been waiting for your call for a very long time." The morning of my appointment with Olivia Harris felt different from any morning I had lived in years. I rose before the sun, dressed carefully in the navy suit I had worn only twice before, once to Margaret's funeral and once to Daniel's wedding. I straightened the tie she had given me decades ago, its edges frayed but still holding the shape of her hands in the stitching. Looking into the mirror, I barely recognized the man staring back. Not just the lines on his face, but the resolve in his eyes. The receptionist at Millbrook Financial greeted me warmly and led me into a private office where a woman in her 50s stood to shake my hand. "Mr. Turner, I'm Olivia Harris. It's an honor to finally meet you." Her handshake was firm, her eyes sharp yet kind. She didn't look at me the way people usually did, with impatience or pity for an old man. She looked at me like I mattered. "Please call me Henry," I said, settling into the chair across from her desk. "Henry then," she said with a nod. "I worked with Margaret for many years. She was one of the wisest women I've ever known. She spoke of you often, and always with great admiration." Her words tightened my throat. "She never told me about any of this. I only found the folder last week." "That was by design," Olivia said gently. "Margaret wanted it that way. She knew if you had known about the money, you would have spent your life working even harder to give it away. She wanted you to live without fear, to finally rest." She turned her computer screen toward me. "Let me show you what you own, Henry." For the next hour, Olivia walked me through a list of assets that left me breathless. Apartment buildings, commercial properties, a farmland estate, stock portfolios worth more than I could have imagined, savings accounts spread across multiple banks, all meticulously managed. When she finally leaned back, she smiled softly. "Your net worth is substantial, Henry, more than enough for you to live comfortably for several lifetimes." I sat there, overwhelmed, trying to reconcile the years I had spent pinching pennies, fixing broken fences for neighbors, just to make ends meet, worrying about heating bills. All that time, Margaret had been building a fortress around me. "Why wouldn't she tell me?" I asked, my voice breaking. Olivia folded her hands. "Because she knew you. She knew you'd never stop working, never stop giving. This was her gift to you, and perhaps her safeguard." Her gaze sharpened. "There's something else. Margaret asked me to keep an eye on your daughter-in-law." My stomach tightened. "Claire?" Olivia nodded. "Before Margaret passed, she voiced concerns about Claire's character. She asked us to run a background check quietly. Nothing criminal, but patterns that troubled her. Claire's family has a history of financial instability. Before she married Daniel, she had significant credit card debt. She also has connections to risky investment groups, some bordering on fraud. Margaret wanted to make sure you were protected if Claire ever tried to influence Daniel against you." The room seemed colder suddenly. I thought about the way Claire had spoken to me, the sharp edge in her voice when she talked about selling the house, her complete lack of warmth. "And Daniel?" I asked, my voice quiet. Olivia sighed. "From what we observed, Daniel follows her lead. He's ambitious, but his ambition is hollow. It bends toward whatever promises him comfort without effort. Margaret worried he might forget the values you and she instilled in him." I stared at the floor. My son, my only child. How had he become this man who looked at me like an obstacle instead of a father? "What should I do?" I asked. Olivia leaned forward. "That depends on what you want, Henry. You have the resources now to protect yourself, but also to teach." Margaret was clear about that. "This isn't just about keeping your home. It's about reclaiming your dignity and perhaps guiding Daniel back to himself." I left her office with a folder full of documents and a mind full of possibilities. For the first time in years, I walked straighter, taller. The weight of fear was gone, replaced by something steady, almost unshakable. At the grocery store on my way home, I ran into Mrs. Jensen. She studied my face and tilted her head. "You look different today, Henry, like your old self." "I feel like my old self," I said. Then I corrected myself. "Actually, I feel even better." That night, I brewed tea and watered Margaret's roses as usual, but everything felt new. For years I had been drifting like a man waiting for the end. Now, I felt like a man about to begin again. The next morning, Daniel and Claire arrived with movers in tow. They expected me to be packed, ready, defeated. Instead, they found me sitting in Margaret's chair, sipping tea as calmly as if nothing in the world could bother me. "Dad, what are you doing?" Daniel demanded. "The movers are here." "I'm not leaving," I said evenly. Claire smirked. "You don't have a choice." "You're right," I replied, setting down my cup. "I don't have a choice. But it turns out neither do you." The movers hesitated in the doorway, unsure of what to do. Daniel waved a hand, barking, "Go ahead, start with the living room." "Not so fast," I interrupted. I rose slowly, walked to Margaret's desk, and picked up one of the deeds Olivia had given me. "Did you know," I asked, holding it up, "that the apartment you've been living in for 3 years has never really belonged to you?" Daniel frowned. "What are you talking about? We pay rent every month." "Yes," I said calmly, "to a management company that transfers it directly to me because I own the entire building." The silence that followed was thick, broken only by the shuffle of the movers shifting on their feet. Daniel stared at the paper in my hand, then snatched it to read for himself, his face drained of color. "This can't be real," he snapped. "Check the records yourself," I said. "You'll find I'm not bluffing." Claire's eyes narrowed. "Even if it's true, you can't keep us out of this house. We'll fight you in court. You'll lose everything." I folded my hands calmly. "On the contrary, you have 30 days to find another place to live. After that, the law allows me to evict you." And Daniel's jaw dropped. "Dad, you can't mean that." "Family doesn't scheme to take away what isn't theirs," I said firmly. "You made your choice when you tried to push me out." Panic flickered in Claire's eyes. Daniel looked at her, then back at me, desperate for something to hold on to. "Tell him," Daniel urged Claire. "Tell him why he can't do this." Claire hesitated, then blurted out, "Henry, I'm pregnant." The words pierced me deeper than any threat. My knees nearly gave out. A grandchild. My son was going to be a father, yet I was finding out like this, used as a bargaining chip. For a moment, my resolve wavered, but then Margaret's letter echoed in my mind. "Use it not to hurt, but to teach." I straightened. "Congratulations, but that doesn't erase what you've done." Daniel's face hardened, his pride warring with desperation. "Dad, don't do this. Don't ruin our family." I looked at him steadily. "No, Daniel. You nearly ruined our family. I'm giving you a chance to save it." The silence after Claire's announcement hung in the air like a storm cloud. Pregnant. A word that should have filled me with joy felt instead like a knife slipped between my ribs. I thought of Margaret, how she would have wept with happiness to hear she would be a grandmother. And yet here it was, spoken not as a celebration but as leverage. "Dad," Daniel said quickly, seizing the moment, "you can't put us out now. Not with a baby coming. This house, it's what we need to build our future." I steadied myself against the edge of the table. "Daniel, your mother and I built this home with love, not deceit. If you want to raise a child here, it has to be with honesty and respect, not by forcing me out." Claire's eyes glistened with tears, but they looked manufactured, like an actress trying to win over an audience. "Henry, please, think of the baby. Do you really want your grandchild growing up without stability?" I held her gaze. "A stable home is not built on lies, not for a baby, not for anyone." Daniel slammed his fist on the table, rattling the silverware. "Enough. This isn't about lies, it's about survival. Do you even know how expensive it is to live in this world now? How hard it is to get ahead? You've had your time, Dad. It's our turn." I felt something cold settle in my chest. "And so you'd throw me out of my own house?" He didn't answer. The movers still hovered awkwardly in the hall, clearly wishing they'd been called for any other job. Finally, I waved them away. "This discussion is over. Leave." Daniel's face twisted in anger. "You'll regret this." They left that day, but I knew it wasn't finished, not by a long shot. The following week, I received a call from Olivia Harris. "Henry, there's something you should know," she said. Her voice was calm, but I could hear the steel underneath. "We've been monitoring Daniel and Claire since your last visit. Claire has been making inquiries about your estate, about assets she doesn't even know exist. She's asking the wrong people, and that could become dangerous." My stomach sank. "Dangerous how?" "She's approached an old acquaintance involved in shady investments. We believe she's desperate for money. Daniel, meanwhile, has fallen behind on his car payments. He's borrowing from friends, even dipping into Claire's credit cards. They're not just greedy, Henry, they're desperate." I closed my eyes. Margaret had warned me in her letter, but hearing it confirmed was like feeling the earth shift under my feet. "What do?" I whispered. "You protect yourself," Olivia said firmly, "and you prepare for what's coming, because they won't stop until they believe they've taken everything." It didn't take long. A few nights later, there was a pounding on my door. When I opened it, Daniel stood there, his face flushed, his eyes bloodshot. Claire hovered behind him, pale and tense. "We need to talk," he demanded. I stepped aside reluctantly. "Then talk." He didn't sit. He began pacing, running a hand through his hair like a caged animal. "Dad, I lost my job." I froze. "What?" "I lost my job 3 months ago," he admitted. "I've been pretending to go to work, hoping something would turn up, but nothing has. We're drowning, Dad. Credit cards, medical bills, car loans, we can't keep up. And now with the baby," Claire's lips trembled, but she didn't speak. I wanted to feel pity. I wanted to put my arms around him like when he was small and scared, but anger rose instead. "So you thought the solution was to steal from me, to declare me unfit so you could take my home?" Daniel's eyes flashed. "We weren't stealing. We were taking what should be ours eventually. Why wait? You don't need all this space." "No need?" I repeated, my voice sharp. "This house is not about need. It's about love, about history, about the life your mother and I built for you." Claire finally spoke, her voice cracking. "Henry, please. We thought we had no choice. We thought if we pushed you out now, we could start over, make a better life for our baby." I looked at her, searching for sincerity, for a flicker of truth, but all I saw was fear mixed with calculation. "You do have a choice," I said quietly, "and you've been making the wrong ones." After they left, I sat in the dark for a long time, listening to the house creak and settle around me. Margaret's roses glowed faintly in the moonlight outside the window. I thought of her letter again. Use it not to hurt, but to teach. The next day, I met Olivia again. I laid everything out: the confrontation, Daniel's confession, Claire's tears. Olivia listened without interruption, her hands folded neatly on the desk. Finally, she said, "Henry, you have more leverage than you realize. Daniel and Claire think your house is all you have. They don't know about the rest. If they push you again, You'll be ready. I frowned. Ready how? We can set terms, she explained. Show them the truth when the time is right. Not just to protect yourself, but to give them a chance to face their mistakes. If Daniel is still the boy Margaret believed in, maybe he can learn. If not, then the law will handle it. And I left her office with a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in years. For the first time, I wasn't just defending myself. I was preparing to fight back. The storm came sooner than expected. A week later, I found an envelope slipped under my door. Inside were legal papers, petition for guardianship, citing mental incapacity. Claire's signature was neatly printed at the bottom. My hands trembled, but not with fear, with fury. I called Olivia immediately. She met me at the courthouse the next morning, documents of our own, neatly prepared. Don't worry, she assured me. We've seen this tactic before. They'll underestimate you, Henry. That's their mistake. When I entered the courtroom, Daniel and Claire sat at one table, whispering to each other with smug expressions. Daniel looked up when I walked in, clearly expecting defeat in my eyes. Instead, he saw calm determination. Then the judge looked up from his stack of papers, his gaze landing on me. His expression froze, his gavel slipping slightly in his hand. "It's him," the judge muttered, his voice barely audible. The room went silent. Lawyers paused mid-sentence. Even Daniel's smirk faltered. They had no idea what those words meant. But I did. The air in the courtroom was thick, the kind of silence that settles before a thunderstorm. I could feel every eye on me as I walked slowly to my seat beside Olivia Harris. My cane tapped against the polished floor, a steady rhythm that kept me grounded. Daniel and Claire sat across the aisle, their lawyer leaning toward them, whispering with forced confidence. The judge cleared his throat. His gaze flickered toward me again, that strange pause from earlier still lingering in his expression. He adjusted his glasses, then spoke firmly. "This is a preliminary hearing regarding the petition for guardianship over Mr. Henry Turner, filed by his son, Daniel Turner, and daughter-in-law, Claire Turner. Let the record show all parties are present." I sat tall in my chair, refusing to shrink. For months, I had been treated like a burden, like a man on the edge of uselessness, but today I was here to prove otherwise. Daniel's lawyer rose first. He was young, polished, with the kind of arrogance that comes from too many easy wins. "Your Honor, my clients are deeply concerned for Mr. Turner's well-being. He is elderly, lives alone, and has shown increasing signs of confusion and poor judgment. He has fallen in his yard, forgotten conversations, and neglected important household repairs. For his safety, guardianship is necessary." Claire nodded solemnly, playing the role of the dutiful daughter-in-law. Daniel folded his hands, wearing a mask of concern that didn't reach his eyes. Olivia leaned close to me and whispered, "Stay calm. Let him hang himself with his words." The lawyer continued, "We have documentation prepared, medical opinions suggesting cognitive decline, witnesses who will testify to his forgetfulness. This is not about greed, it is about love, protection, and ensuring Mr. Turner's golden years are spent in comfort and safety." The word love nearly made me laugh. If love had been in their hearts, they would have knocked on my door to bring soup when I was sick, not legal papers to steal my house. When it was Olivia's turn, she rose with quiet confidence. "Your Honor, what my client suffers from is not incapacity, it is betrayal. He is a man of sound mind and strong will, and today we will prove not only his competence, but also the true intentions behind this petition." She placed a thick folder on the judge's bench. Inside, you will find Margaret Turner's will and accompanying documentation. You will also see financial records demonstrating Mr. Turner's full control and management of substantial assets. Assets his son and daughter-in-law have conveniently failed to mention. A ripple of surprise spread through the room. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. Claire's face paled. Olivia pressed on. "The truth is simple. They assumed this house was all he had. They tried to push him out, believing him powerless. But what they did not know is that Margaret Turner left behind a legacy, one that ensures Henry Turner is far from dependent. On the contrary, he is the landlord of the very building where Daniel and Claire reside. Their rent payments, month after month, have gone directly to him. Gasps echoed from the back of the courtroom. Daniel's head snapped toward Claire, fury flashing in his eyes. "You said," he hissed, but stopped himself. "Order," the judge barked. Olivia continued, her tone sharper now. "Not only that, but we have evidence of significant debt on Daniel and Claire's part. Credit cards in default, a car loan on the brink of repossession, and in Claire's case, inquiries with questionable parties about Mr. Turner's estate. This is not guardianship. This is a hostile takeover." The lawyer sputtered. "Your Honor, this is irrelevant." "On the contrary," the judge interrupted, his voice stern. "If your clients are attempting to assume guardianship, their financial motives are highly relevant." I watched Daniel's composure crack. His hands clenched the table. His mask of concern was gone, replaced by raw anger. "Dad," he blurted, ignoring the lawyer's frantic attempt to hush him. "Why are you doing this? We're your family. Everything you have should come to me eventually. Why make it so hard? Why hoard it when we need it now?" The courtroom buzzed with murmurs. Claire grabbed his arm, whispering frantically, but he pulled away. His voice rose. "We've been struggling while you sit here with money, with property, with everything. You could fix our problems with one signature, but no, you'd rather watch us drown." His words echoed like a confession. I stood slowly, leaning on my cane, my voice steady. "Daniel, I worked my whole life to give you a future. I broke my back in warehouses, skipped meals so you could eat, saved every dime I could, while your mother quietly built something even greater for us all. And now you stand here, not asking for help, but demanding my life, my home, as if it's already yours." The judge's gavel struck. Silence in the court. Daniel's lawyer sank into his seat, rubbing his temples. He knew the case was slipping through his fingers. Olivia handed the judge one last document. "Your Honor, this is a letter from Margaret Turner written before her death. In it, she states explicitly that should her husband ever be threatened by greed within his own family, he is to retain full control of all assets until his death. Only then, and only if her son has treated him with respect and love, is he entitled to share in the legacy. Otherwise, it remains solely Henry's to distribute." The judge read the letter silently. His face softened for a moment, then hardened again with resolve. He set it down carefully. "This court finds that the petition for guardianship is not only unfounded but malicious. Mr. Turner is of sound mind, and the evidence suggests that this petition was motivated by greed rather than genuine concern. The case is dismissed." Claire gasped. Daniel's face twisted in rage. The lawyer slumped, defeated. But the judge wasn't finished. He leaned forward, his eyes locking on Daniel. "Furthermore, this court is recommending investigation into possible fraud regarding the medical statements submitted. If any documents were falsified, consequences will follow." Daniel's mouth opened, but no words came out. Claire buried her face in her hands. The gavel came down one final time. Court adjourned. The room erupted in murmurs as people gathered their things. Olivia touched my arm gently. "It's over, Henry. You've won." End of. But as I looked across the room at Daniel, my son, my only child, I didn't feel like a man who had won. I felt like a father who had just watched his child lose himself entirely. That evening, back home, I sat in Margaret's chair with the folder in my lap. The victory felt hollow. I had kept my home, my dignity, my independence, but at what cost? Daniel's eyes, filled with anger and desperation, haunted me. I unfolded Margaret's letter again. Use it not to hurt, but to teach. Maybe, I thought, the battle in court was only the beginning. The real fight would be not against Daniel, but for him. For the boy Margaret and I had raised. The boy who had once believed in more than money. I closed my eyes and whispered into the quiet house, "Margaret, help me find the way." The week after, the court hearing felt like living in the eye of a hurricane. Outside, everything looked calm. I went about my daily routines, coffee at dawn, trimming Margaret's roses, tidying the house. But inside, I knew the storm wasn't over. Daniel hadn't called. Claire hadn't either. Word spread quickly in Millbrook. Neighbors whispered, some offering sympathetic smiles, others shaking their heads in disbelief. Mrs. Jensen came by with a casserole and hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. "You did the right thing, Henry," she said. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." But at night, when the house was quiet, I found myself replaying Daniel's words in court. "Everything you have should come to me eventually." It wasn't just greed, it was entitlement, a seed planted somewhere along the way that had grown into something poisonous. And I couldn't stop wondering if I had been the one to plant it. 3 days later, I heard a knock at the door. When I opened it, Daniel stood there, shoulders slumped, looking like the boy he once was after losing a baseball game. His tie was crooked, his eyes bloodshot, and for the first time in years, there was no arrogance in his posture. "Can I come in?" he asked softly. I stepped aside. He walked in slowly, like a man carrying invisible chains. Claire wasn't with him. We sat at the kitchen table. He stared at the wood grain, not at me. "Dad," he began, his voice rough, "I messed up. I thought I could handle things, that I could give Claire the life she wanted, but everything I touched just fell apart." I waited, letting him find his own words. He rubbed his face with both hands. "The debts, they're worse than you think. I've been gambling, online, trying to win back what I lost. It just kept spiraling. Claire found out and—" His voice cracked. "She told me the only way we'd survive was to get the house. She said if I really loved her, I'd do whatever it took." My chest tightened. "So you listened to her instead of me, instead of your mother's memory." His eyes filled with tears. "I was scared, Dad. Scared of losing her, scared of failing. I thought if I gave her what she wanted, she'd stay. She'd believe in me again." I swallowed hard. "And did she?" He looked away. "No, she's gone. Packed her things 2 nights ago. Said she wasn't going to waste her youth on a man who couldn't provide. She's staying with her sister in another city. I don't think she's coming back." The words hung in the air, heavy and sharp. Part of me wanted to rage at him, to scream about his betrayal, about how he had chosen Claire's voice over mine, over Margaret's. But looking at my son, broken and hollow, I felt only sorrow. That night, Daniel stayed in his old room. I walked past the door and heard muffled sobs, the kind I hadn't heard since he was a child. I stood there for a long time, hand resting on the doorframe, fighting the urge to go in. In the end, I whispered through the wood, "I'm still here, son, when you're ready." The next morning, he joined me on the porch, coffee in hand. We sat in silence for a while, watching the sun paint the horizon pink and gold. Finally, he spoke. "Dad, do you hate me?" The question cut deep. I turned to him. "Daniel, I could never hate you. I hate the choices you made, the way you let greed blind you. But you are my son. That doesn't change." His eyes glistened. "I don't deserve forgiveness." "Forgiveness isn't about deserving," I said quietly. "It's about love, about second chances." Over the next week, Daniel stayed in the house, helping with chores he hadn't touched since he was a teenager. He mowed the lawn, fixed the broken fence, even cooked breakfast one morning, burning the bacon so badly we laughed until tears rolled down our faces. For the first time in years, I glimpsed the boy Margaret and I had raised. But the shadow of Claire lingered. One afternoon, as we were cleaning the garage, Daniel found a box of her old things. Letters, receipts, even a notebook filled with plans, budgets, renovations, sketches of how she wanted the house to look once I was gone. Daniel flipped through the pages, his face pale. "She planned everything," he whispered. "She even had dates written down. Deadlines for when I was supposed to convince you to sign." I placed a hand on his shoulder. "Son, sometimes love isn't love at all. It's control dressed in sweet words." He closed the notebook and shoved it into the trash. "I don't know how I didn't see it." "You saw it," I said gently. "You just didn't want to believe it." One evening, Olivia Harris came by to check in. She listened as Daniel explained everything, his debts, Claire's manipulation, his mistakes. When he finished, she tapped her pen against her notebook. "Daniel, you're lucky," she said firmly. "Lucky your father didn't give up on you. Lucky Margaret prepared for this. We can help you untangle the mess, but it won't be easy. You'll need to rebuild from the ground up." Daniel nodded, shame etched in every line of his face. "I'll do whatever it takes. I just want to make things right." Olivia looked at me. "Henry, what do you want to do?" I studied my son, the man who had betrayed me, yet was now asking for a chance to stand again. Margaret's words echoed in my mind. "Use it not to hurt, but to teach." "I want him to work," I said finally. "Not just for money, but for trust. If he wants forgiveness, he has to earn it not with words, but with actions." Daniel met my eyes and nodded. "I will, Dad. I promise." But life rarely moves in straight lines. 2 nights later, just as I was beginning to believe in Daniel's change, there was another knock at the door. When I opened it, Claire stood there, suitcase in hand, her eyes cold and hard. "Henry," she said, her voice smooth as ever, "we need to talk." Behind me, I felt Daniel stiffen. "What are you doing here?" he demanded. She stepped inside without waiting. "I came back for what's mine." I folded my arms. "You already made your choice, Claire. You walked away." She smirked. "I walked away from you, Henry, not from the house, not from the future that should belong to me and my child." Daniel's face went pale. "The baby! It's mine!" She lifted her chin. "Of course it's yours, and that means I have a claim. This family isn't finished with me yet." The storm that had quieted was about to rage again. Claire's words struck the room like a thunderclap. For a moment, none of us moved. Then I rose slowly, leaning on my cane, and looked her squarely in the eye. "Claire," I said evenly, "whatever claim you think you have, it isn't built on love. It's built on greed, and greed doesn't build families, it destroys them." She opened her mouth to argue, but I held up a hand. "I don't care about the money. I don't care about the house. What I care about is what these walls mean. They carry laughter, sacrifice, tears, and joy. They are not yours to rewrite. And if you truly carry my grandchild, then you need to understand this. The only inheritance worth fighting for is love, respect, and integrity. Without those, no amount of money will ever be enough." Daniel's voice shook as he stepped forward. "Claire, I can't do this anymore. I won't trade my father's dignity for your ambition. If you want a partner who bends to your greed, it won't be me." For the first time, Claire's composure cracked. Her eyes hardened, but she said nothing more. She turned on her heel and left, the slam of the door echoing through the house. Silence followed, heavy yet cleansing. Daniel stood there, breathing hard, as though shedding years of weight in a single moment. I placed a hand on his shoulder. "Son, this isn't the end of your story. You've fallen, yes, but you can rise again if you choose to build on something real this time." Tears welled in his eyes. "I want to, Dad. I want to be better for you, for Mom, for my child." I nodded, my chest aching with both pain and pride. "Then start now. Every day is a chance to write a new chapter. And so here I sit, in the same chair Margaret once claimed as hers, telling you this story. Not because it is easy to relive, but because it carries a truth too many of us forget. Our worth is not measured by houses, by bank accounts, or by what others try to take from us. Our worth is measured by love given freely, by respect earned honestly, and by the courage to stand tall when the world tries to push us down. If you take anything from my story, let it be this. Never let anyone convince you that you are powerless. No matter your age, no matter your scars, you carry a strength that no one can steal. And if my words touched you today, stay with me. Walk this journey with me, because together we can remind the world that dignity, love, and family are treasures worth more than any fortune.